I learned my place in our family structure long before I ever stepped foot in a classroom, back when my world consisted mainly of our suburban home and family gatherings. My older brother Jake was the brilliant son that our entire family universe revolved around, the center of everyone's attention, especially our mother's. He was the celebrated golden boy who could genuinely do no wrong in my mother's constantly admiring eyes, while I was simply his younger sister, Lily, the quiet observer. I spent countless hours sitting politely in various audiences, watching him receive trophies, awards, and endless praise for everything from sports achievements to simply being charming. This family dynamic established itself early in my childhood, and it never really evolved or changed as we grew older. I gradually grew accustomed to my role of watching from the sidelines while he continuously enjoyed the glowing spotlight. It was a frustrating pattern that repeated itself year after predictable year, through every birthday celebration, holiday gathering, and family milestone, constantly reinforcing my secondary position. The constant comparisons between us began when we were both very young, almost as soon as I started developing my own personality and interests. "Look how naturally popular Jake is with all the other children," my mother would frequently say to me with a sigh, as if my quieter nature was a personal disappointment to her. "Why don't you try out for cheerleading like the other nice girls?" she would repeatedly suggest, pushing me toward activities she considered appropriately feminine. I actually secretly preferred reading complex business books and teaching myself marketing strategies through online courses. But she consistently dismissively called this wasting your precious time with silly daydreams that won't get you anywhere in life. She truly couldn't understand why I wasn't more interested in traditional girlish activities that aligned with her narrow worldview. Her limited vision for my life never quite matched who I actually was inside, creating a constant tension between us. In high school, the stark differences between us became even more pronounced and visibly obvious to everyone in our social circle. Jake was the celebrated football quarterback who dated the head cheerleader, embodying the classic American high school dream. Meanwhile, I was the serious, studious girl quietly building websites for local businesses in the school library during my free periods. My mother attended every single one of his games without fail, cheering loudly from the stands and organizing post-game celebrations. But she never once bothered to come see the regional coding competition I unexpectedly won, despite my repeated invitations. Her attention and pride always had a very clear, undeniable favorite, and I wasn't it. I tried desperately not to let this obvious favoritism hurt my feelings, but the rejection always stung deeply, leaving invisible scars on my young heart. College was the time when I genuinely thought the gap between us might finally close, that my academic achievements might finally earn me some recognition. I worked incredibly hard throughout high school and earned several substantial academic scholarships to good universities. But my significant achievements were usually met with simple, unenthusiastic nods from my family, as if they were merely meeting basic expectations. When Jake initially got his sports scholarship, however, my mother threw him a huge, excited party with all our relatives, celebrating as if he'd won an Olympic gold medal. I learned painfully early that our successes would never be measured equally in our household, that the bar was set dramatically different for each of us. The standards were completely different depending on which child was achieving, and this double standard shaped our family interactions. Jake unfortunately lost his valuable athletic scholarship after just 2 years due to consistently poor grades and lack of academic effort. My mother immediately made elaborate excuses for him, claiming the coaches simply didn't appreciate his unique talents and the professors were unfair in their grading. Meanwhile, I graduated at the very top of my class with 2 solid job offers waiting for me after commencement. But there was no special party for my significant accomplishment. Just a quiet, somewhat disinterested, "That's nice, dear," from my mother before she changed the subject back to Jake's latest troubles. The glaring disparity in their reactions was both expected given our history and still profoundly disappointing to experience as a young woman seeking parental approval. The real professional world turned out to be rather unkind to Jake despite his early confidence and natural charm. He restlessly hopped from one entry-level job to another, never staying anywhere more than a year, always blaming his various bosses for his lack of progress rather than taking responsibility. I, meanwhile, worked steadily at my first marketing position, carefully saving every spare dollar I earned while living frugally. I secretly started building my own business at night while maintaining my day job, quietly dreaming of building something much bigger and more meaningful for myself than traditional employment could offer. Those late nights fueled both my business and my growing determination to prove my worth. At our regular family dinners, the familiar script never seemed to change, becoming almost ritualistic in its predictability. My mother would proudly list Jake's latest exaggerated achievements. Some promotion he'd inflated in the telling, or a bonus that never actually materialized in reality. Then she'd inevitably turn her attention to me with that familiar look of mild pity. "Are you still working at that little marketing firm?" she'd ask in that tone that suggested I was underachieving. "Jake is already a manager at his company, you know," she'd add, though I knew from other sources his title was substantially less impressive. She said this as if I should be embarrassed by my steady, methodical career progress compared to his unstable trajectory. The ultimate breaking point came during a particularly tense Thanksgiving dinner exactly 5 years ago, a date forever etched in my memory. Jake dramatically announced he was being hired as a senior director at some new startup company, embellishing the title and responsibilities considerably. My mother beamed with overflowing pride at his news, her eyes shining with admiration for her golden boy. Then she turned and looked directly at me, speaking the words that would ultimately change everything for me, that would become the catalyst for my transformation. "You're a sweet girl, Lily," she said with condescending affection, "but you'll simply never be as successful as your brother." Her casual certainty felt like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs and solidifying my resolve in that singular moment. I left that painful dinner early that night, making a quiet excuse about not feeling well, hot tears of frustration stinging my eyes as I drove home through quiet streets. But by the time I reached the safety of my small apartment, something remarkable had shifted within me. The tears had mysteriously dried up, replaced by a cold, steely determination that felt both unfamiliar and powerful. I decided right then, standing alone in my kitchen, that I would build something so undeniably successful that my mother would have no choice but to finally see my true worth and capabilities. Her dismissive words became the rocket fuel for my future ambition, transforming my pain into purpose with startling clarity. I immediately poured all my energy and modest savings into my new agency, which I strategically named Nexus Creative to represent connection and innovation. I worked relentless 18-hour days, 7 days a week, gratefully taking on clients my old firm would have considered too small or unimportant, treating each one with utmost importance. I gradually developed an excellent reputation for consistently delivering incredible, measurable results that exceeded expectations, and my business grew steadily through word-of-mouth recommendations alone, without any formal advertising. Those first 2 grueling years tested my endurance beyond anything I'd previously known, pushing me to my limits both mentally and physically, but I refused to quit. Within 3 determined, focused years, Nexus Creative had successfully expanded to 3 different cities through careful planning and strategic hiring. I wisely hired a brilliant COO named Sophia to become the public face of our growing company, recognizing that her extroverted personality complemented my more reserved nature perfectly. I personally preferred working strategically behind the scenes on business development and client strategy, and this smart arrangement let me maintain my privacy while continuing to grow the business far beyond my wildest initial dreams. The deliberate separation between my public and private life felt necessary for both personal and professional reasons, allowing me to preserve parts of myself untouched by business pressures. My mother knew absolutely nothing about Nexus Creative or my real role within the rapidly expanding company, and I preferred to keep it that way for my own peace of mind. When I visited family for holidays or occasional dinners, I deliberately kept talking about my generic marketing job, happily letting them assume I was still just a mid-level employee somewhere, flying under the radar. The less they actually knew about my true life and accomplishments, the more I could peacefully focus on building my business without their constant judgment, unsolicited advice, or unrealistic expectations weighing me down. It was my secret world of achievement, a sanctuary of success I protected fiercely from family interference. Meanwhile, Jake's professional career continued its unfortunately rocky path forward, marked by frequent job changes and consistent underperformance. His much-boasted senior director position lasted only 8 months before that company downsized, and he was among the first let go due to his mediocre contributions. He quickly moved to another firm, then another, always talking big about his capabilities, but consistently delivering very little of substance or lasting value in any role. My mother nevertheless continued making endless excuses for his chronic underperformance, blaming everyone from difficult bosses to unfavorable market conditions, anyone but Jake himself for his professional struggles. About a year ago, Nexus Creative miraculously landed our biggest client yet, a massive global tech company that represented a major industry coup for us. The multi-year contract was worth multiple millions and represented a huge breakthrough that positioned us as serious players in the competitive marketing landscape. We significantly expanded our team, moving to a beautiful downtown office space with stunning city views that reflected our growing success. I still deliberately drove my sensible car and lived in my comfortable but modest apartment, maintaining the low-profile lifestyle I preferred, but my business had quietly become an industry powerhouse that competitors watched closely. I heard through casual family gossip that Jake had been let go from his latest position at a mid-level marketing firm, this time for clashing with management over his performance reviews. My mother was understandably worried sick about him, calling me repeatedly to express her concerns about his career struggles. "It's just so completely unfair what they did to your brother," she told me during one of our phone calls, her voice tight with anxiety. A man with his obvious talents and natural leadership abilities simply shouldn't have to struggle like this in today's job market. I offered no particular sympathy during these conversations, just listened quietly to her familiar complaints and excuses, my perspective having changed dramatically through my own journey. A month later, Sophia brought me a thick stack of resumes for our new account director position, a role we needed to fill quickly due to our expanding client roster. Near the very top of the pile was Jake's unexpected application, his professionally formatted resume standing out immediately. My heart raced nervously as I carefully read through it, my eyes widening at the significant exaggerations. He dramatically inflated his experience, boldly claiming credit for major projects I knew from industry contacts he'd barely contributed to at his previous jobs. The sheer audacity of his lies and embellishments surprised even me, though perhaps it shouldn't have given our history. Sophia looked at me carefully after I'd finished reading, her expression shifting from professional curiosity to personal concern as she noted my reaction. "Do you personally know this candidate?" she asked me directly, leaning forward slightly in her chair. "He's my older brother," I admitted quietly, the words feeling strange to say in my professional environment. She immediately offered to politely reject his application, recognizing the potential complication, but I thoughtfully stopped her before she could make the decision for me. "No," I said firmly after a moment's consideration. "Please schedule him for a proper interview with the team. I want to see this particular situation for myself firsthand before making any judgments." I watched Jake's first interview discreetly from the observation room next to Sophia's office, the one-way mirror giving me a perfect view of the proceedings without being seen. He was all smooth confidence and practiced charm throughout the meeting, just like he'd always been with our mother his entire life, turning on the charisma full force. He talked expansively about his extensive leadership experience and his so-called proven track record of delivering exceptional results, using all the right business buzzwords, but offering little concrete evidence. From my professional perspective, it was clearly all artistic smoke and strategic mirrors designed to impress and obscure his actual limited capabilities and spotty work history. After the interview concluded and Jake had left the building, Sophia looked openly skeptical about his prospects, her expression telling me everything before she even spoke. "He's unfortunately all talk and very little substance upon closer examination," she reported honestly, tapping her pen against her notepad. "But he is your brother," she added carefully, leaving the unspoken question hanging in the air between us. I thought about it seriously for a long moment, weighing professional standards against complicated family loyalty. Offer him the position, I finally decided, my voice firm with resolve. But strictly on a 90-day probationary basis, with clear performance metrics. And I'll be personally conducting his final review myself, in person, when the time comes. Jake excitedly called our mother that very night, I learned later, boastfully telling her about landing what he called a prestigious position at the city's hottest marketing agency, making it sound like he'd been hired as a top executive rather than a probationary account director. My mother subsequently called me, her voice brimming with familiar pride for him, barely containing her excitement. "Your brother Jake just got an absolutely amazing job at some fancy new agency downtown," she informed me, as if sharing breaking news. "Maybe you should consider applying there too. They might have something suitable at an entry level for someone with your more limited experience," she added, the unintended insult landing with its usual sting. For the next 3 months, I closely watched Jake's work performance through detailed weekly reports and confidential team feedback, gathering data objectively. His work was decidedly mediocre at best, frequently taking credit for others' contributions while consistently avoiding difficult tasks and challenging clients that required actual effort. He had absolutely no idea I actually owned the company, typically referring to me in internal emails and conversations as the mysterious founder no one in the office ever saw, which I found both amusing and revealing about his lack of attention to detail that he never connected the dots. The important day of his probation review finally arrived, marking the end of his 90-day trial period. I dressed particularly carefully in an expensive, powerful suit I'd originally bought for especially important client meetings, wanting to project authority and confidence. I sat alone in the main conference room, calmly waiting for the meeting to begin, reviewing my notes one final time. Sophia professionally brought Jake in precisely on time, his eyes initially scanning the room looking for the important boss he fully expected to meet, completely overlooking me sitting at the head of the large table. When his eyes finally landed on me sitting commandingly at the head of the table, his confident smile immediately faltered and then disappeared completely, replaced by confused recognition. "Lily? What are you doing in here?" he asked, genuinely confused by my presence in what he assumed was an executive meeting, his brow furrowing in bewilderment. Sophia gestured formally toward me, her voice crisp and professional. Jake, I'd like to properly introduce you to Lily Carter, our founder and CEO, she stated clearly, watching his reaction closely. The color drained from his face so completely, and suddenly I honestly thought he might faint right there, his hand gripping the back of a chair for support. I watched him closely as he struggled to process this shocking information, his substantial ego crumbling in real time right before my eyes, his confident posture deflating visibly. "You're the actual founder?" he stammered incredulously, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror at the situation. "But Mom always said." I calmly cut him off before he could finish that familiar, tired sentence I'd heard my entire life. "What our mother said doesn't matter anymore," I told him evenly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "What objectively matters right now is that your performance here has been thoroughly unsatisfactory across multiple metrics, and we need to discuss your future with this company." I didn't outright fire him that difficult day. Instead, I offered him a clear, professional choice, wanting to be fair despite our complicated history. He could humbly start over in a basic entry-level position and honestly earn his place through demonstrated hard work and proven results, or he could choose to leave immediately with a standard severance package. He ultimately chose to leave, too proud and embarrassed to work for his little sister, unable to handle the role reversal. My mother called me that night, absolutely furious about the situation, her voice shrill with anger. But for the very first time in my life, her angry words didn't hurt me at all, bouncing off the armor of my hard-won self-confidence. I had finally built my own validation through years of determined effort and quiet perseverance, and no one could ever take that satisfying accomplishment away from me, no matter how they tried.